In this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, we talk about the House Judiciary Committee's meeting on the ridiculousness of the ATF's pistol brace rule. Yeah, they finally had a chance to vote on it, and we're going to listen to some testimony. That's right, on this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, we're going to D.C. Welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. This is your ever humble host, Steve Zimmerman. And this episode hopefully doesn't get too boring. I know you love to hear my sultry voice, but we're going to hear some voices of some other amazing people. And because this episode is going to be so deep, I got to crack open the bottle. Hopefully I don't get it all over my computer. Anyways, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. So yesterday, I had the privilege of watching a 15-hour live stream. It was supposed to be, what I thought it was going to be was the House Judiciary Committee. Oh man, the House Judiciary Committee's hearing on the ATF's pistol brace ruling, and how it is just being ridiculized. The ATF is just going way too far, and they had no congressional oversight. So where the Republicans are running the House and the Judiciary Committee is full of pro-gun patriots, they had to review this. But the problem is there was hours and hours and endless hours on border stuff, which, don't get me wrong, border security is highly necessary. But our friends on the more liberal side of the aisle just kept bringing up amendments and changing words and what things meant, and it was ridiculously long. In fact, I went and took care of some things, and I came back. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I clicked back up on the live stream, and they had just started meeting on the ATF stuff. I thought I was going to miss it, but I didn't, and because I was up so late, and I listened to all this tedious hearing. You don't have to. I'm just going to bring you the best parts from the Republican side. And there are some amazing speeches, sound bites. I don't know what you want to call it. We have some amazing people on the Judiciary Committee from the pro-2A side. Some absolute rock stars, true patriots. So I hope you don't mind. We're going to listen to their words. I'm not going to try and paraphrase things. I want them to share in their words so we can hear, what they have to say. I would rather you hear it from them and not from me. All right, so let's jump on this first one. This is Thomas Massie. And Massie, he had a lot to say. So a lot of these sound bites are going to be from Massie. I'm maybe not going to share every sound bite. There's probably over an hour total of things that I gathered together. So hopefully, there might be some jumping around. But anyway, let's just jump in. This is Thomas Massie.
Kentucky has recognized Mr. Massie. The most disingenuous or uninformed thing that will be said tonight about this issue is that banning a 4-ounce piece of plastic is going to save lives. It will not save a single life. So let's not say that. This doesn't ban a gun, this ATF rule. It bans a piece of plastic that goes on a gun. It looks similar to something that won't be banned, which is a collapsible stock. There will be 100 million collapsible stocks still legally obtainable in this country. But this isn't a collapsible stock. It just happens to look like one. It was designed for pistols for people who have disabilities so that they can stabilize a pistol and shoot it from their wrist. And let's be clear, the other side of the aisle had 2 years when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. They could have made a law against this particular plastic accessory, but they chose not to. Instead, this is a ruling from the ATF, a ruling that in just a few weeks is going to create tens of millions of felons who have no idea that they're going to be felons and there will be prosecutions. And these people followed the law when they purchased these items. The law that they could go look up and read, a law that the ATF interpreted for them, sent letters to the manufacturers and the purchasers of these things, and said that these plastic accessories.
Maybe you don't care about pistol braces, and I get it. I kind of feel the same way about bump stocks. But here's the issue. First of all, so what if we can have pistol braces? Who cares? What it isn't the matter. The government doesn't need to know if you have a pistol brace, in my opinion. It's none of their damn business. But here's the issue that Massey's bringing up, and that is that the ATF over 10 years ago said, yeah, that's great. Go ahead and do it. You're fine. There's no issue. The patents look good. Everything looks fine. You're in compliance.
Are legal under our technical interpretation of what this plastic accessory does. It is legal to buy. It is legal to sell. It is legal to transfer. In fact, nobody even needed a license. It's a plastic accessory. This thing can't shoot a bullet. It doesn't function like a gun. It is a plastic accessory.
Is it a bump stock?
I'm glad you asked this question, Mr. Gates. It is not a bump stock. It does not simulate or accelerate rapid fire of a firearm. In fact, it makes a pistol less concealable. A pistol regularly wouldn't have this thing on it. It is something you add to a pistol that makes it less concealable. And under the law, it is legal because it was designed not with the intent to allow a pistol to be fired from the shoulder, but with the intent to allow somebody who's weak and can't fire a pistol from the wrist to be able to more accurately fire a pistol from the wrist. So it doesn't even meet the definition, the legal definition of what would be a stock added to a pistol. It is a pistol brace for the wrist. And let's be clear, people had 120 days to comply with this. This isn't even in the news. A lot of people bought these. They're in their safes. They're in their houses. They have no idea that on May 1st, if we don't do something, on May 1st, there will be tens of millions of felons who have no idea that they've just become felons. But the ATF did something like this in 1994. They reclassified what was called the Striker 12 shotgun, street sweeper. They changed it to a destructive device. There were only a few thousand of these guns. They gave people 7 years to register these guns. Those were guns, by the way, not plastic accessories. And they gave them 7 years to do this. By the way, the bump stock ban, there were probably 500,000 of those in existence. Something similar happened with those. How many of those do you think have been registered? About 500. About 500. Because a lot of people don't even know that they are felons in possession of that.
And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think 500 people have registered them because they're saying, F you, ATF, get out of my life.
At this point, because of a rule, not because of a law, because of a rule. Yes, the ATF accepted comment, but they really didn't do much about the comment or the concerns. And what this boils down to is, what was your intent when you purchased this plastic accessory? They're trying to impart crime based on intent, and that's what this rule does. This rule is flawed. This rule will create millions of felons. We need to stop this rule. Mr. Clyde's Congressional Review Act needs to be implemented quickly to prevent creating tens of millions of felons on June 1st. And I yield back.
So there's Mr. Massey. He is a rock star. He is stalwart. He is not going to back down. He is standing up for your rights. And honestly, if you care about any of this stuff, about ATF's overreach, if bump stocks or shoulder braces, any of this stuff, rare breed triggers, if you give a damn about this stuff, you need to get up there and tell them thank you. Get on their Twitter feeds or whatever and say thank you for standing up for me. Let's jump to this next one here. It's going to take me a second. We're going to skip some of the ones I have, so I got to figure out where I want to be here. Honestly, this hearing was frustrating because I sat and listened to both sides. Honestly, I only have stuff from the Republican side of the aisle. That's so your head doesn't explode while you're driving or trying to relax at night or any of that stuff. So let's see here. We're getting close to where I want to be. I think it's right here.
I think we're making it too complicated. This is,
Jim
as
Jordan.
Mr. Massey said, a 4-ounce plastic accessory created for disabled veterans by a veteran, now used by approximately 40 million Americans. And 10 years ago and 5 months, November 26, 2012, the ATF said, just fine, no problem. Now, here they are 10 years later, changing their mind, and they just did it. We didn't do it, as Mr. Massey pointed out. Democrats had the Congress last 2 years. They passed a bunch of gun legislation through this committee.
This is important.
They could have done this.
Listen to what
They
he's
didn't
saying.
do it. The ATF did it. No bill that came to committee, no bill that went to the House floor, no bill that went to the Senate, no bill signed by the president. They just did it. And now 40 million Americans, if you don't destroy the brace, destroy the gun, get a longer barrel, or register your firearm, you're a felon. And as Mr. Massey pointed out, a bunch of Americans don't even know it. They don't even know. They're in some states where they can't. That's the problem. So you guys introduce the legislation if you want, but we should get rid of this rule that is going to cause so much harm to so many Americans, many of them, the type of Americans that Mr. Fitzgerald just described, who like to hunt, particularly deer hunt in Wisconsin. That's how simple this is. Do it the right way. Pass it through Congress if you want to do it.
I wish you wouldn't have said that.
Don't chip away at the Second Amendment by having bureaucrats do it. The ATF do it when 10 years ago in 5 months, they said it was just fine. You'll back to the gentleman from Wisconsin.
All right. So this next clip is absolutely on fire. I just tweeted this gentleman as I was doing show prep. This congressman, what's his name? Mr. Wesley Hunt. This man is a patriot, veteran. He is stalwart. This is the whole point of me doing the show is I wanted you to hear this specific 5 minutes. And please tell these representatives, even if they're not from your state, tell them thank you because they are standing up for our Second Amendment rights. Check this out.
As a father of 3 young children, I'm deeply wounded by the horrific tragedy that we saw in Nashville. We saw the lives of 6 people taken, 3 young children. The shooting was reported to police at 10:13 a.m., and the suspect was shot by 2 Nashville police officers at 10:27 a.m. This quick response time saved countless lives is a testament to law enforcement, and we thank them every single day. As a congressman, I want to do everything in my power to protect children all around this country from experiencing something like that again. Unlike my colleagues on the left, I'm different. And I think an actual solution to protect our children is not what's being proposed by the left, nor is it political. It is a clear attempt to erode the Second Amendment rights for law-abiding citizens and AR-15 owners like myself. Every time I walk around this Capitol, I feel extremely safe. I've deployed multiple times. I've been on multiple bases. I think to myself, oh my goodness, hot damn. I don't have to really worry about anything because I'm surrounded by people with guns that want to keep me safe. We have barricades, multiple checkpoints, metal detectors. We are staffed by 2 or 4 police officers at all times. All day there was a gentleman standing at this door in case somebody entered this room with a gun. The U.S. Capitol Police is comprised of more than 2,000 officers and over 350 civilian employees who provide operational and administrative support that has an annual budget of approximately $460 million. And for some of my colleagues, that's still not enough.
This
because
man
they
is
have
awesome.
their own private security on top of that. surrounded by people that carry guns. And I can assure you that the people here on the Hill are well protected. What about our school children? This is not a round.
He's holding up a 50 caliber
This is a pen.
pen, shape
Now,
of a 50 BMG
One of my
round.
staffers tried to bring this pen to my office, and he was stopped by a metal detector, and it went through the x-ray machine, and he was almost tackled by our police services right here at the Capitol, doing their jobs, of course. And we proved that, of course, it was a pen. If a pen that looks like this can't get to my office, then how does a homicidal maniac that has weapons walk into a school and arbitrarily murder innocent children? Because we wear this pen, that does not make us more important than our children.
Let's talk about the congressional pen they put on their
There's a
lapels.
private school in Houston, Texas, and I was there a few months ago, and I was giving a young man his appointment to West Point. I drove on the campus, and I was met by 2 armed guards. There were parking places that were just for visitors, and they had even more armed guards beyond that. I felt very secure as I drove onto this school. The headmaster, head of school, she met me in the front, and I said, "My God, ma'am, I feel very secure in this place. What's the secret here?" She said, "Wesley, actually, given my religious beliefs, I hate guns. I don't do guns. But it's my responsibility to keep these young people safe. It's not about how I feel about guns or what I think about them or what I do or don't know. I must keep these children safe because they are the most precious things that we have on this earth." I keep hearing this word AR-15s and a weapon of war. I find that funny because, well, I've been to war. And you should Google the AX-64 Delta Apache helicopter. That is what I would call a true weapon of war. But I feel people calling these things a weapon of war, but they've never been to war. They don't know what war is. And they're using the AR-15 as a scapegoat for everything.
Amen,
I say
man.
that.
Amen.
Because according to the ATF, 6% of homicides were at the hands of AR-15s, 60% at the hands of handguns. So if you really want to have an intellectually honest conversation about homicide reduction, you would go after pistols. But you don't do that because you want to go after.
Now, this is something important. Okay, and there's one thing that does frustrate me about some of these representatives, and maybe they're verbalizing it in a different way. You just said maybe you should go after pistols. If you really looked, and I know we talked extensively about the White House's assault weapons ban, extensively. Hopefully we got the point across. In that bill, it did talk about semi-automatic handguns, anything that can take a large capacity magazine, in air quotes, anything over 10 rounds. In some cases, there were 6 rounds. So that is the intent in the long run, is to go after anything semi-automatic with a detachable magazine.
After the AR-15 first, to then eventually get to the pistol to disarm Americans to infringe on our Second Amendment rights. I want you to know something. It ain't the gun. It's the homicidal maniac. The deadliest days in this country, 9/11, not a single shot was fired. Timothy McVeigh, fertilizer, Oklahoma City. The Boston Marathon, pressure cookers, not a single shot was fired. I know what war looks like, but what I do want to say is we have got to agree we can all protect our children, and we should not be protected more than them. And I yield back.
Fantastic. Fan-freaking-tastic. We need more men and women with this much intestinal fortitude to stand up against the bullying from the left side of the aisle that is continuously making false accusations, pointing to poor studies, lying about the facts to scare the public and to encourage the ATF and other bureaucracies to make garbage legislation, not even legislation, excuse me, garbage rules that can be enforced by the penalty of law. Only Congress can make law. And this is the big stink. Now, I haven't really gone through, Mr. Dettelbach had a chance to meet with Congress yesterday. I haven't really gone through any of those sound bites. There's a couple that have been floating around. I know it's easy to say, that guy is an idiot. No, my friends. He is as dumb as a fox. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's saying. And he's very, very deliberate. He is very wily. Don't call him an idiot. He is not stupid. The words he chooses, the way he structures his responses is very, very deliberate. Because they want themselves to look so benign and so picked on by the Republicans. There's way more to it. Way, way more. Now speaking of Mr. Dettelbach, our new friend from the ATF, this is Mr. Nils. I can't remember where he's from, what state he represents, but he is jumping right on after. Let's see here. Make sure I get it lined up just right. I don't want you guys to miss any of this. Actually, do you know what? He ends up popping right up after.
Lady yields back. The gentleman
There
from
it is.
Texas, Mr. Nels, is recognized.
Well, guess Texas. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Folks, it appears to me that the gentleman who leads the ATF, the director of the ATF, is unqualified to do so, and let me explain why. Yesterday, the ATF director, Steve Dettelbach, testified in front of our colleagues on the House Appropriations Committee. His poster board, there he is, that fella right there. When asked if he could define what an assault weapon was, I mean, it's been said several times on the other side, what an assault weapon was, Mr. Dettelbach, the sole man responsible for leading an agency charged with enforcing the laws and regulations related to firearms in the United States of America, said, I quote, "Unlike you, I am not a firearms expert to the same extent as you may be," end quote.
There's something very, very important right there. Sorry, that got really loud really fast. There's something very, very important that you need to really understand. So jumping to that subcommittee hearing yesterday, which was the 19th, I think. What today? Yeah. So yeah, whatever day it was. The day before I recorded this, I think it was the 19th. He said, "Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert." Okay. That was in response to Congress. Did he just ruin the case to the ATF when he stated, we don't make policy? He was asked to define an assault weapon. And that's when he kind of hemmed and hawed. And then he said, "Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert. Like you may be," or something like that. Because Congress makes the law, Mr. Dettelbach. Like I said, he is wily. He's a stinker.
Let me say that again. The man responsible, this fella right here, the man responsible for gun regulations of the United States of America, said he is not the #1 firearm expert in the room that day. Now tell me how that makes sense, folks. It makes no sense at all. So this non-expert, I will say he's a non-expert. This non-expert, Mr. Dettelbach, introduced a final ATF rule in January, which would reclassify pistols as short-barreled rifles if they have a stabilizing brace attached. This rule would also require American gun owners, many of who are veterans, to either register pistols with stabilization braces with the ATF, turn over those firearms, or face 10 years in jail. Yes, 10 years in jail. We don't give murders that in the justice system today, and up to a $10,000 fine. It is quite evident to me and everybody that watched that hearing yesterday that this man is not a firearms expert. He does not understand our disabled veterans and other Americans rely on these braces to use their firearms. He does not understand that this is an abuse of rulemaking authority. He does not understand our Constitution provides God-fearing Americans, many of us in this room, the right to bear arms. And I tell you, I'm a proud co-sponsor of this resolution today to repeal Mr. Dettelbeck's unconstitutional pistol brace rule. And
Hear,
I
hear.
urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, and I yield back.
All right. What do you guys think about that? Sorry, I recently got a new computer and I just realized how stinking loud the fan is. So that's what that drone is in the background. I apologize. I noticed when I turn up like that, when I turn up the mic as loud as it should be, I really, really hear the fan, and I apologize. I'll have to find a way to remedy that, won't I? All right, so he goes on and shows his displeasure to the new ATF director, who is a buffoon. Sorry, he's not. He is wily. He is dangerous, and he holds our rights in his puny little fingers. So the next clip up is Mrs. Hagman. That's what it is. She is from, I think, Wyoming. This is another one of those, just like Mr. Hunt's speech. This is awesome. Check this out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to correct the record as to.
All right, so I'm going to preface this just a little bit. So nonstop during the hearing yesterday, the left was pointing out firearms are the leading cause of death among children. Now, we've talked about that statistic. It's flawed. And Massey, actually, he kind of talks about it too, but he kind of screws up a little bit. In my research, I've noticed that even through the CDC, which a lot of this information comes from, death from children basically 0 to 14, there's not homicide, there's accidents, there's drownings, there's like cancer and other illnesses, there's birth defects, a slew of things. Firearms are not the leading cause of death from 0 to 14. 0 to 14, it is not firearms. Where that does bump up is 15, and they include all the way up to 19 years old. That means 18 and 19, who are technically adults, are counted in this child death statistic. So this is what she talks about.
The leading cause of death of children. That is a statistic that has been thrown around rather aggressively this evening. It is not true. And in fact, that is not what the CDC data shows. What people are relying upon is an inaccurate study that does not relate specifically to minors, but actually included 18 and 19-year-old adults. The three top causes of death for children are certain conditions originating in the perinatal period, congenital malformations, deformations, and chromosomal abnormalities, and symptoms, signs, and abnormal clinical and laboratory findings. That's actually the CDC data itself. If you actually look at children 12 years and younger, the other additional causes of death, leading causes of death, are suffocation, motor vehicle accidents, and drowning, all of which are more than the deaths caused by firearms. So I just want to make sure that the record is accurate so that we don't deal with those bad statistics. I also want to say that it is very clear to me that my colleagues on the other side apparently believe that guns and pistol braces and other inanimate objects have the ability to stand up, walk out of the house, drive down the street, and act on their own volition. But that is not the case. Guns do not act without the person actually shooting them. And
it's amazing what happens when there's adults in the room to
focusing
argue.
on the criminals. So what I would say is, one of my colleagues just said this hearing is not about a piece of plastic, but that's exactly what it is about, because that is the issue before us this evening, and it demonstrates the problem with the FDA, or the ATF regulation in the first place. The ATF has issued a regulation attempting to outlaw pistol braces. The ATF does not have the legal authority to do that. If my colleagues on the other side want to have a debate about banning guns and the Second Amendment, I suggest that we have the hearing specific to that issue, because what we're dealing with tonight is a regulation in the Congressional Review Act. So the fact that the Democrats have immediately gone to gun control and banning weapons and banning and attempting to take away our Second Amendment rights,
She's
I
trying to
think
bring
very
it back
clearly
together.
shows exactly the problem with the ATF rule and why it should be repealed, because of the fact that the ATF does not have the legal authority to do that. It's the legislative body that has the legal authority to act. And then at that point, we also have to address the Second Amendment. But I just want to read something very quickly here that I was just looking up as I was listening to this, to the testimony and to the statements made today. This is something that we just had an anniversary yesterday, and I'm just going to read this very quickly because I think it epitomizes where the other side is coming from on this discussion. The sun never set on the British Empire. It was the largest empire in world history. Out of nearly 200 countries in the world, only 22 were never controlled, invaded, or attacked by Britain. In April of 1775, the British Royal Military Governor of Massachusetts, General Thomas Gage, sent 800 British Army regulars under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith on a preemptive raid to seize guns from American patriots at Lexington and Concord. George Mason of Virginia stated, "To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them." That is why we have the Second Amendment. It protects our ability to keep and bear arms. The ATF does not have the legal authority to adopt the rule that they have. To the extent that there is to be any discussion about the banning of guns, it should be taking place in the legislative body with the understanding and the analysis of the Second Amendment that is appropriate. And with that, I yield
Boom,
back.
mic drop.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a long night, and I'm going to try to be pretty quick here because I don't think we're going to convince them, and I don't think they're going to convince us. But there's a few things
I don't know
want
what
to
it
say.
is about this guy's accent. This is the only reason why I put this in here. He's from Jersey, and I don't know, his accent's awesome, and he's also spot on because he sees it where he's at.
So much of this really is political. I guess folks don't want to admit it, but I mean, you had control. You had and you've heard this before. You had the executive branch. You had the House. You had the Senate. And now it all gets blamed on us. You could have made change then. You had the majority in every single house, but it didn't happen. And it's always a political answer. You know why? Because it sounds so good. Let's take guns away from legal gun owners that 99.9% don't do anything wrong ever, but that will fix the problem. It won't fix the problem. So we'll make this brace illegal. Now, are you going to tell me because we make this brace illegal that criminals and those with mental health problems are going to, decide, gee, I can't use the brace anymore, so I'm just going to stop? They're breaking the law. They're murderers, or they have serious mental health issues. They're not going to change because you change a law. They are already used to breaking the law, and the people will still do it, will continue to do it. We do need to do things that was mentioned here a couple times, like making our schools safer. And I'd love people to join me on my bill, my Safe Schools bill, which would make sure that people just couldn't walk straight into a school, that before they walked in, they had to be buzzed in not once, but twice, and that you had a safety officer there. And the safety officer could make sure that things were safe in the inside. And I guarantee you that crime would go down in schools, that mass murderers would go down in schools. And in New York City, some folks, I guess, made fun of the victims. Even tonight you did. Well, the interesting thing about those victims, one got the living daylights beaten out of them. And the other two, it was victims of knives. So, we, I guess, could take knives away, but, we're always going to blame guns because guns are scary. People talk about guns. They don't even understand what really is an assault weapon. What's an automatic? What's a semi-automatic? Most of the people making the rules, most of the people doing the legislation don't even understand what they're doing legislation about. Well, I shoot at the range. Once to twice a week. I'm a gun owner. I believe in the Second Amendment. And those that say that older people disabled people and veterans aren't there using those devices, aren't telling the truth. I don't know how else to say it. It's not accurate. Because if you go there, you'll see them. You know, individuals who have enjoyed this for years, they're older, their hands are shaky, people that have neurologic problems, people that have other health issues, and the older veterans. Maybe if we had better prosecutors that didn't keep having a revolving door and turn bad people out, and areas
This
where we
is a
keep
huge
making
point.
the rules tighter and harder for guns, Chicago, New York, California, the crimes are going up and the shootings are going up because we're letting bad people out of jail. But that doesn't matter, I guess. The truth is, those folks that commit those kind of aggressive crimes, those criminals should stay in jail for a good long time, maybe forever. And finally, like I said, I'd welcome anybody to join my Safe School Act if they really believe that they want to make a difference, because that will make a difference. Mr. Hunt was so right. His speech was so good. He was on the money. Here's somebody who's a veteran. Here's somebody who was in the military. Here's somebody who's in war. Here's somebody who understands guns, like the people at the range where I shoot. And they wouldn't even understand what half of you were talking about because it doesn't work. So make them illegal. Make these braces illegal, and let's see, because you're going to promise people it's going to make things better, how much better it gets.
Mr.
And you know
Andrew,
what?
will you yield for just one clarification?
No, I got to finish this.
Oh,
And
it's open right
you know
now.
what else it doesn't show? It doesn't show that the statistics show, look them up, when they were illegal in New Jersey in certain areas, it was no better crime-wise. It didn't make a difference. A bad person or a person with severe mental health problems are still going to commit crimes. And there's much better ways to go about that. We need more mental health work being done in our country. And I don't know who asked me, but I will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is late.
Oh, sorry about that. I got to turn my mic back up. I'm going to jump down a little bit. I was going to share another quote by Mr. Johnson and Mr. Massey about stocks and everything's a loophole. I love that quote from Mr. Massey saying everything to the Democrats. If they don't like it, everything's a loophole. I think that's hilarious because it's true. That's how they react. We're going to jump to another Patriot down here. Let me see where he's at. I know some of this might be really boring to you guys. I know some it's like, well, Steve, why aren't you just talking? And I don't want to be the one that's paraphrasing everything. I want to make sure that you guys are getting exactly the words from these congressmen. All right, here's Chip Roy. This guy's another stalwart saint when it comes to the Second Amendment.
I thank the chairman. I thank my friend from Kentucky. Associate myself with his remarks. There's a lot of different ways to go with all of this. I mean, look, I think the truth is, I think the Supreme Court or the courts, before it gets to the Supreme Court, will kill this. And I think they'll be right to do so. I think this is an extreme overreach by the executive branch in total violation of the Constitution, the Administrative Procedures Act. And it should alarm all of us, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, and regardless of what you want to achieve. I want to see a wall get built along the southern border. I supported President Trump doing so, supported President Trump using emergency authority to do it, but was happy to introduce legislation to limit that authority, to limit executive power. We should all want to do that. But instead, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are completely ignoring this blatant abuse by the administrative bureaucrats in the executive branch because they like the outcome. But we should all be troubled by it. And we shouldn't just defer to the courts to defend our constitutional rights and separation of powers. We have an obligation to do it. So with all due respect to my colleagues complaining about being here at 12:40 in the morning, not doing anything important, I think what we're doing here is of the utmost importance, and not because of the inherent substance of the question, but because we have an obligation to defend the constitutional separation of powers. And we are doing that here rather than punting to the courts. It is critically important that we do this. There are a bunch of different things I could go through. But the one thing that's clear here is my colleagues here, this is not about wanting to just get rid of this piece of plastic or have registration. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to ban these weapons. We know this, they've said so repeatedly. Probably most of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle here, I don't know. Certainly the president, certainly most, they want to ban them. They want to get rid of them. They'd like to get rid of many more weapons, semi-automatic pistols, otherwise. Almost all of which are in commonplace use. And I could focus on all of that.
It's important that he said common use right there. Now, we talked about this before in the Heller case. They were talking about, I think it was stun guns, and the threshold or the minimum amount, I guess it wouldn't be a threshold in that case, was 200,000. If there was 200,000 in use, then it's considered common use. There are tens of millions of arm braces out there, well within the 200,000 common use.
We don't have enough time. I think the most important thing to focus on right now is not the guns, but it's what's happening. Why is this happening? What is happening to our young men that they will walk into a school and do this? What kind of a society are we operating in? And if you look at the data right now in terms of what's happening, in a period just right before COVID, data at 81,000 emergency department visits by young people as young as 5 coded for suicidal ideation. Quarter of those turned into hospital stays. Suicide rates skyrocketed during COVID. Suicidal thoughts skyrocketed during COVID. The fact is, the people who are perpetrating these things, young, male, angry, notably disturbed, refusal to attend school, anger toward girls and women, antisocial, no sense to belong to family, to school, to community, and threats online. You go down the whole list of what's going on. We are a unchurched, detached, immoral society that is focusing too damn much on social media and what you can get on all of these devices. If we don't address that, none of this matters.
Spot on.
We are leaving a generation of Americans completely removed from what it actually takes to engage in society and function. We are killing our children. We are killing them every second we allow them to sit on these devices all day, stewing on 24-hour news cycles of the most negative influence you can possibly have on a regular basis. I had an event that I was at with my son Easter weekend where devices were not allowed. We spent all day with a whole lot of people that we didn't know and talked to them from other states, other walks of life. And it was wonderful. And if we don't address this, and if we don't address our families, and if we don't address our societal problem and the lack of families and the lack of fathers and the lack of community, we are going to lose it if we haven't already lost it. The problem isn't the guns. The problem isn't it's the fact that we're letting our society rot, a cultural rot. That is our calling as leaders of this society. I yield back.
Did you listen to what Chip Roy said? Did you not just hear it? Did you listen to Chip Roy? He touched on something that I feel is probably pretty poignant to the situation here. Between social media, online content, YouTube, whatever, the lack of parenting, that is a cause. I believe he is right. That is a cause of the problem that we're seeing. It's pretty amazing. We need more people like Chip Roy, like Mr. Hunt, Wesley Hunt, like Mrs. Hagman. But you know what? We don't just need them in Congress. We need them in our homes. We need you and me to be them. That's important. So important. Let's jump to another one. Here is
California,
Mr. McClintock.
is
That's right.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a familiar pattern. After every criminal atrocity, the Democrats call for a new round of gun control laws. And now we have more than 50 years of experience with those gun control laws. You'd think if they actually worked, things would be getting better and not worse. We found these laws are very effective at disarming law-abiding citizens. We've also found they're extremely ineffective at disarming criminals and terrorists and madmen. We know how to reduce gun violence, prosecute gun criminals, send violent criminals to jail until they're old and gray, execute the murderers, harden our schools, confine the dangerously mentally ill so that we can treat them, stop letting terrorists into our country across our southern borders. Yet these are the time-proven measures the Democrats refuse to restore or even to consider. Woke Democratic district attorneys often refuse to prosecute gun criminals, or they quickly drop gun charges to reduce their sentences. The Democrats have all but abolished the death penalty. They've released dangerous criminals from our prisons, released dangerous illegal aliens into our communities. They've flooded our streets with the dangerously mentally ill. They've turned a blind eye as terrorists come across the border that they've left wide open. And then they wonder why we're plagued with violent criminals. I am as sick of these crimes as the Democrats say they are. So here's a modest suggestion. Let's get the criminals and madmen off the streets, fire the woke district attorneys, and prosecute violent criminals to the maximum extent of the law. And if that's not enough, then strengthen those laws. And while we're at it, let us also reclaim the constitutional guardrails that reserve to the elected representatives of the people the sole prerogative to make these laws. The Democrats love to talk about threats to democracy. Well, one of the most fundamental threats to democracy is removing the power to legislate from democratically elected representatives of the people who are accountable to our democracy and giving it instead to unelected bureaucrats who are immune and often contemptuous of that democracy. That's what this measure does. It's to restore those guardrails. And with that, if Mr. Massey has anything to add,
Yes.
I'll yield to him.
Absolutely. Just to reiterate the point that Ms. Hageman from Wyoming made, the data that the gentleman submitted for the record is flawed. They exclude children under the ages of 1, and they include adults aged 18 and 19. Specifically, the Kaiser study that Mr. Cicilline submitted for the record has this flaw. And when you quit excluding children under the age of 1, and when you quit including ages 18 and 19, by the way, those are mostly gang deaths involved in gang violence, it's simply not true that it's the leading cause of death for children.
Would the gentleman yield
anybody's
for a question?
definition of children. Yes, sir. I'll yield.
Does that mean
This
that
is where
between
Chip
the
kinda
ages of
drops the
2 and
football.
19, gun violence is the leading cause of death under your statistics?
The Kaiser study says that, yes. And
You're okay with that?
no death is good. No, it doesn't, because you're not between 2 and 18, 2 to 9, or 1 to 19. But reclaiming Mr. McClintock's time, let me be clear about what's happened, because I don't want you all to walk away thinking this will save lives. I really don't. This is an aesthetic, ergonomic, cosmetic accessory to a firearm. It doesn't change the muzzle velocity. It does, in spite of Mr. Cicilline's claims in a prior hearing, it doesn't change the rate of fire. It doesn't change the capacity of the weapon. You could say, the one thing you could say is it improves the concealability by 8 inches, but in most of these shootings, all of the shootings that I've seen on camera, the person is not concealing anything. They are coming in guns blazing, concealability. They are living in a fantasy, a lot of times fueled by prescription drugs that have separated them from reality. if there needs to be any kind of data that we need in front of this committee, any kind of report or any kind of registry, it should be, we should have access to know which prescription drugs these killers were on at the time they committed the crime. And that should be collected by FDA. They're supposed to say that these are safe and effective and report the side effects. And if we could do one thing at this level, that would be it. And I yield back to the gentleman.
All right, let's take a break real quick, and we'll jump right back into it. I have something I'm going to share with you in a minute.
Make sure you like, review, and share. Now back to the Range-Minded Podcast.
All right, welcome back. So I just got a couple more sound bites left, and then I've got, well, I guess one more, and then a treat. I wanted to just share this with you because it is just too good. All right, so this last one from the Republican side of the aisle is Massey again. Okay, check this out.
Unanimous consent request. I'm going to try one more time.
Oh.
I'd ask unanimous consent to put into record a PolitiFact.
Sorry,
The
Mr.
Office in America's
Cicilline
statement, "Are firearms a leading
always
cause of
has
death
to
of
argue
children?"
his point,
Yes.
even though it's
Put it on the
pointless. He's as sharp as a dull pencil.
Ask unanimous consent request
This
Gentleman
Mr.
from
Massey.
Kentucky's recognized.
to submit for the record an article from 2.5 weeks ago in Snopes of all places, which fact checks Mr. Cicilline's information and shows that Ms. Hagelman is correct, not Mr. Cicilline.
Fact checking the fact checkers. All right, Ms. Consent.
I'd like to submit for the record Pew Research data dated February 3rd, 2022, which shows, and I think this gets to Mr. Ivy's point, which I respect greatly. It shows that the majority of these firearm deaths that we're quoting in these adolescent years are suicides. That's the majority of them. And that is something that we need to focus
Without
on.
objection.
And
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for unanimous consent.
I have a unanimous consent request to
you
submit
can
for
see
the
it kinda
record a
jumps back
paper
and forth a
by
little bit.
Crime Prevention Research Center comparing the global rate of mass public shootings,
We talked
US
about this
rates,
last week.
comparing their
2 weeks
changes
ago?
over time.
Maybe
The
I was
US
just
is
researching it.
well
I can't
below the
remember.
world average in terms of number of mass public shootings per capita. And it's not as a consolation, but just as a rebuttal to what's been said here tonight, which was not true.
Gentlelady yields.
All right. So a lot of information. I know there's a lot of sound bites. I know maybe that's something that you just don't like. I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. I'm not quite sure. But at least you didn't have to listen to my voice the entire time. So just because you've hung out this long with me, I've decided I'm going to give you just a little bit of a treat. And I thought we would start with this. This should lead us to the most intelligent comment of the entire hearing came from this man, but I want to share with something that he brought up. I don't know how many years ago, long time ago. Check this out. You're going to love this if you haven't heard it before.
Island that at its widest level is 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very
relatively
small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me,
He's
sir. I can
amazing,
certainly
isn't he?
supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that. The Guam
This is not a
population, I think,
joke. This
currently
is
about
actually
175,000,
Hank
again, with 8,000 Marines
Johnson.
and other families, it's an addition of about
He
25,000.
is an elected representative. Hank Johnson, the the intellectual giant that somehow keeps getting reelected. Now, why did I bring Mr. Hank on? Because he had some insight to share. Now, I could not find this on the House's website or House's YouTube channel. I searched and searched and searched. I watched the live through. Hope he doesn't mind. I'm going to say his name. The Guns and Gadgets channel. Jared's a cool dude. I don't know him personally, but I sat and watched his live stream, like I said, from about 9 a.m. till what was like almost 11 o'clock last night. So you're going to hear him laughing at Mr. Johnson's incredible input, and so almost convincing, even me to throw my guns in the trash. Check this out. This is absolutely stunning.
Yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
I hear and see tears about the number of felons who are allegedly going to be created if this legislation does not pass. But I don't hear or see a single tear for any of the children who lose their lives annually to gun violence in this country. Firearms are the leading cause of death of our children here in
Again,
America.
we've ridden that dead horse
And
too
it's
far.
no coincidence that just over the last 3 months of this year, we've broken all kinds of records in terms of mass shootings, which are defined as shootings where.
And that's such a disingenuous comment because they keep redefining what a mass shooting is, and we've talked about that before.
Like climate change. Hottest
That doesn't exist either.
months on record, the highest number of gun
That was Jared,
deaths
not me.
on record, and our children are dying, and we're talking about felons being created because of a 4-ounce piece of plastic, as it's been described as, just an innocuous piece of plastic that they call it a stabilizing brace. Well, that's an innocuous sounding name for a 4-ounce piece of plastic, but actually what this is a
Hold on to
it's
your
a-
hats, folks.
it's not a harmless plastic accessory. It's a portable shoulder stock that can be detached easily from a
Oh my
large
gosh.
format pistol like an AR-15 or an AK-47. You can attach it, turn it into essentially a short-barreled rifle. Now, short-barreled rifles are regulated under the National Firearms Act of 1934. The country's history has been one of regulating rifles. These kinds of
By the way,
instruments.
that was a
of
racist
war.
law. It was from
But we've
minorities
seen
from getting firearms.
continued promiscuity with respect to firearms in this country. And it's leading to more and more and more deaths, particularly of our children. And it's because we continue to pump out new and improved weapons of war. The thing that this is going to do is to allow a short barrel pistol to be put in one pocket.
What?
And a portable shoulder stock.
As he's
also
talking,
known
he's putting
as
his
a,
hands
uh,
in his
a
suit jacket
stabilizing
pockets.
brace in the other pocket. A person can then walk into a place, a movie theater, a church, synagogue, mosque, bowling alley, movie theater, school, with a fully concealed short-barreled rifle that does the damage of a battlefield weapon in seconds. So it's making it easier to do mass killings in America. That's what this 4-ounce piece of plastic is doing. And until we start closing the door on making firearms more deadly, we're going to continue to see new and improved versions of killing machines. Is that what we really want in this country? And then to bemoan the fact that 40 million portable shoulder stock devices, as the
Oh my
chairman mentioned,
gosh.
40 million. It's a tragedy to deprive 40 million people of their
Yeah,
4-ounce
it's a
piece of plastic.
constitutional right, my friend.
When this, in fact, was something, it was a pistol brace at one time. It was originally built as a pistol brace for the disabled, but it quickly morphed into a portable shoulder stock once the loophole was discovered. And now we've got a flood of these weapons. They're actually short-barreled rifle converters. They're actually large format pistol converters into
The
short-barreled
genius
rifles.
is
Killing
amazing with this man.
machines. When are we gonna start closing the door instead of opening the door even wider and getting rid of the door and just blasting a hole into the entire structure to allow Mack trucks to get through of these high-powered weapons that are affecting our children's lives? Let's vote no on this, and let's do some common sense regulation
Gentlemen,
of these high-powered weapons. And
gentlemen's
with
time.
that,
I could not help it. That man, I don't know how he keeps getting reelected. He has been in Congress for more than one term. The Guam thing was I really can't remember how long it was. That was years and years ago. Yet he keeps getting reelected. And they say that the ballots are not rigged. There's no way Georgians are that inept at electing their representation. And yet they bring him and put him on this committee, any committee, to where he's trying to have an intelligent conversation with the folks on the right side of the aisle, the 2A group that really know and understand the Second Amendment, how firearms work, who actually go out to the range and shoot, as we've heard before. Well, maybe I didn't share that clip or not. And then the left decides to parade people like Adam Schiff, Hank Johnson. There's, I can't remember everybody. Oh, Cicilline, that claimed that the shoulder brace was a bump stock in disguise. These people are buffoons. Buffoons. How are they getting reelected? A. And how are we not defeating them in these hearings? I'll tell you how it's not working out for us. You ready for this? Are you sitting down? Are you paying attention as you're driving or working or whatever you're doing? I want you to stop what you're doing. Don't cause an accident. Listen to what I'm saying, because this is why we are losing the culture war-ish in some ways when it comes to Second Amendment issues. It's because they get their AstroTurf friends, they get their David Hogg, and there's that new kid that's all over Twitter that's super annoying. They get these useful idiots that are really good at being loud and obnoxious. And because they speak with such passion, they wind up the masses and they're loud. You get the Mom Demand Action Group or every town group or whatever you want. You know, insert anti-gun group, whatever place. I'm tired. It's after midnight. Sorry. And they're active. We need to be as active. I posted a video on my Instagram feed the other day. I put it on the Range Minded Instagram. I put it on my personal Instagram. I think I put it on my Facebook page. I threw it on the Range Minded Twitter feed. I need your guys' help. I have an idea. I have an idea for a video, but you have to be willing to let the world know that you own a gun and that you carry a gun, and you're not willing to, or you're not worried about sharing that with other people. I'm not going to have you tell, what you carry, where you carry, that kind of thing. But we need to let the world know, at least this country know, that owning and carrying a gun is completely normal. It is completely legal. It does not cause crime. It actually deters crime. If you're willing to help me with that, that would be fantastic. What I need from you is about a 90-second video. I would ask of you, if you're willing to do this, recite the Second Amendment. Maybe tell the world why you choose to carry, what it means to you to be the immediate responder to your life-threatening situation, and how important it is for you to be a patriot, I guess. Let me pull up my notes here because I had it written down the other day still, and I noticed it's still up here. Quote the Second Amendment, why you carry, how you feel about being a gun owner. That was what I missed. And your thoughts of being the immediate responder to your self-defense situation if needs be. I would love for you guys to help out with this. If you're willing to put that together, you can just email the video to rangeminded@gmail.com. I want to compile a bunch of these stories together. I want to make something that has some value. It's just something that's been popping around in my head the last few days. Anyways, gang, I'm going to let you go. It has been a long enough video. I didn't do any video this time, and I think I'm going to stop doing the podcast on video. I think it's just too much of a pain in the ass, honestly. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I hope you got something out of this podcast. I wanted you to hear from the representatives themselves, their own words, their own voice, their own passion and desire to keep the Second Amendment alive. That is the purpose of why the podcast is here, to help you become a good steward of the Second Amendment. Get involved. Don't be scared to be you. Don't be scared to talk about firearms around people. It's okay. You're probably going to be called some things that might hurt a little bit. But sticks and stones, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. They're just words. They hurt if we allow them to hurt. I constantly posted on honestly, that live feed and on Instagram, or not Instagram, but on Twitter, that freedom is greater than safety. And I will always feel that way. Freedom is greater than safety, because with freedom comes safety. If we choose only to be safe, that allows a crazy, out-of-control government to come in and want to keep us safe. And we know how history has shown what happens when the government says, let me take care of you. There are plenty of examples of that. Plenty. Don't be beguiled on all this emotional garbage that keeps getting thrown out. Yes, I know that it's hard to not see the stories of another mass shooting or whatever. But you need to understand that what is not being said is how violent the rest of the world is. You're only seeing information that they want you to see. I used to work as top 40 DJ years and years ago. Oh my goodness, excuse me. I learned then an important lesson, and it still is true today. In that case, the record companies only want you to hear certain songs to drive those songs up in popularity. In fact, some of them, like, here's inside baseball on top 40, okay? Request lines, trash. It's not even the real thing. Songs get played because they put in circulation. And it comes the same way with news. News is only shared because they want us to see certain stories. They want us to feel a certain way. They want us to be slighted against our neighbor in a certain way. Don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you see. Do your own research. I kind of geek out and I get online and I look at crime throughout the world and I look at the statistics and I realize, holy crap, the United States is not even in the top 50 countries with the highest homicide rates, not even in the top 50. Some of that is because we have the ability to defend ourselves from our attackers. Firearms are used thousands of times a day in defense. And a huge portion of those thousands of times a day, not one shot is fired. I know you guys understand this. I know you do, but you need to be able to bolster that argument. Do your own research. I know some of it is super boring. Do you think I wanted to sit and watch a congressional hearing for, let's see, what time did I turn it on? About 9 o'clock? From 9 to 7 p.m.? Yeah, 9 in the morning till 7 p.m. And then I turned it back on at about 9 o'clock at night and watched it till almost midnight. Does that sound like fun? No. Why did I do it? Because I wanted to hear the reality. I didn't want to hear sound bites on Fox News or the Firearms Policy Coalition website, or I wanted to see it for myself. And we all need to be doing that. I know some people just want to go to the range. They just want to shoot guns, and that's as far as they want to go. And I 100% understand that. But part of being a good steward of the Second Amendment is knowing your rights, being able to articulate those rights, and arguing with facts. I don't even want to say arguing doesn't get anywhere. But if you understand where to find the information, you can say, look, let them read the information. Let them do the research. Maybe they'll change their mind. Maybe they won't. But being a good steward of the Second Amendment is not carrying a gun every day in self-defense. It's also arming yourself with knowledge of the Constitution, of the heritage of the Second Amendment, and being able to articulate why you still carry today. Don't be scared. I truly feel that firearms ownership is a wide majority in the United States, but people don't want to be labeled as something that is hurtful, so they just shut up and let the other people like us take the flak. I got big shoulders. I don't care. People can call me whatever they want. I really don't care. They're just words. It is time to stand up. I don't want a revolution. I do not want a revolution, but I want a restitution. I want it to be restored to its pure purpose. This Constitution, this government that was designed by honest men who had flaws, but who doesn't have flaws? This Constitution and the Bill of Rights and this country is designed to be lived in. Well, it's designed for God-fearing people. And once they take the fear of God out of it, not fear like, oh, God's going to kill me, no. People that obey basic, decent human rules of life. That's why we're seeing the crime that we're seeing. That's why Chip Roy's comment that I shared, that's why I wanted to share it, because it points to a major problem. Pay attention, folks. Pay attention. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for hanging out. I know this was a little bit longer podcast than normal. I know it's probably a little bit drier than normal, but I'm already dry, right? You guys are awesome. Be of good courage. The sun will always come up tomorrow. Even on a stormy day, tomorrow the sun comes up. It's a new day, and we can start again. You guys are awesome. Stay safe. Take somebody shooting, and be good stewards of the Second Amendment. Peace out. Hey, gang, thanks for listening to this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. We enjoy having you guys here. Plus, if you want to reach out to us on our social medias, we got @RangeMinded on Instagram or Facebook or even Twitter now. And we just started a YouTube channel. Well, we started a while ago, but we're actually trying to use it, so you can find us on YouTube as well. If you want to email the show, you can email us at rangeminded@gmail.com. We check that all the time. Anyways, give us a good rating, give us a review, whatever it takes. We'll take whatever level you want to give us, and we'll see you next time on the Range Minded Podcast.